Morning, everybody. How we doing? This morning, we're going to be talking about the soft skills of songwriting. Before we get started, I want to do a quick icebreaker, and I want you to think of one word that describes how you feel about collaborating with others. It could be anything. It could be excited, nervous, curious, anything. All right, Doug says awesome. Bev says curious. Scott says fantastic. Vanessa, curious. Carolyn says life. I love it. Susan B says energy. Dave says inspiring. Rowan, anxious and excited. That's good. Ryan says optimistic. Ava Goins, nervous and excited. Vicky Lynn says stronger. Awesome. iPhone Chris says dope. I love it. I would agree with you. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of feelings and emotions that co-writing and collaborating evoke. So thanks so much for sharing those. We spend so much time honing our technical songwriting skills, things like the melodies, the lyrics, and the structure. But what really makes or breaks a songwriting career, often it's these non-technical people skills that we call the soft skills. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. And that's what we're focusing on this month in Song Chasers. And soft skills are very, very important. Soft skills matter more than you think. Think about it. Talent alone isn't enough. You need to be able to work effectively with others to build relationships and to find your tribe to navigate this crazy industry. That's where these soft skills come in. We're talking about three things. And the first one is a word that I made up, but the first one is called collaboration. It's a mishmash of collaboration and communication. So we're going to be talking about collaboration, networking, and resilience. These are going to be the skills that are going to open doors, enhance your collaborations, and help you to build a sustainable career. So today we're going to be covering how to actively listen, how to give and receive feedback, how to handle conflict, because it will come up at some point, how to network effectively, and how to stay resilient. I'm going to spend most of the time today on the first part, collaboration, just because I love the word, but I will cover a few things on networking and resilience as well. So let's go ahead and dive in. On collaboration skills. So again, this is communication plus collaboration. That's what I'm talking about here. So let's start with the communication side. First up, communication is so fundamental, and it's way more than just talking. It's about active listening. How often do we really listen to what someone is saying instead of just waiting for our turn to speak? Active listening means giving your full attention, understanding the other person's perspective, and showing that you are 100% engaged. Now, a lot of this might come off as super basic, like this is all very 101, just human skills, but it's so important. And I felt the need to teach on some of these things this month because I think oftentimes we focus so much on the result, on the outcome, on the success, on the cuts, on the awards, whatever it is that's in front of you, that's your goal, that we forget that this is all about relationships. Songwriting and any songwriter success in the industry is going to be, it's going to live and die based on relationships. And so much of this is just about basic communication and basic people skills. So let's talk a little bit about active listening techniques. A lot of this is very 101, just, learning to make eye contact with people when you're talking to them, when you're in a room with them, giving affirmations to what the other person is saying, even if it isn't the final idea. It's things like not being on your phone or computer the whole time. That's such a big one, especially for the younger writers out there who are on TikTok and Instagram or Snapchat constantly. And that can be a killer for this active listening. I think there's a deficiency in people coming up who really don't know how to listen. because they're so distracted by what's going on here 24/7. So don't be on your phone or your computer the whole time. And also another big one is don't just be noodling on your guitar or keyboard constantly. This is a huge one. There's so many people who have this issue where, sometimes it's okay just to say, hey, can you just, just give me a second to think. And sometimes that's the best thing you can say in a room. So be aware of if that's you and you have a tendency to do that. Maybe it's a kind of a nervous mechanism of you just have to have something in your hands and you have to be playing on something. But just try as much as you can to just leave some space in the room. The other thing is that in co-writing, we can learn a lot from stand-up comedy and improv, and they have a rule of yes and, the yes and rule. Basically, it's building off of what the other person is saying rather than just saying, no, that's a bad idea. Like if somebody throws out an idea, you say, oh yeah, yes and you expand upon it rather than just completely diverting another direction. And that's a really, really great skill to have. If y'all ever have a chance to do some improv comedy training, that can be a really, really great lesson for you as a songwriter and as a collaborator. Because ultimately the worst thing that we can be as collaborators is a brick wall. A brick wall. I was writing with a super successful writer yesterday at Sony, and he was talking about another one of his co-writers and saying, that guy's a great writer, but he's like writing with a brick wall. It's hard to get any ideas through. That's not the type of writer that you want to be known as. Communication is also about being clear and concise. In songwriting sessions, you need to articulate your ideas effectively. And in this, being concise is key. Don't say more than you need to say. I think oftentimes the gold nuggets can get lost in the word salad that so many of us have trouble whittling down. So that is a key skill that you guys need to work on, you need to be aware of. I do have a really good tip that I actually learned from a friend of mine, Benji Cowart, who many of you all have had the privilege of meeting and learning from as well. Oftentimes, if you're a lyricist, the trick is about simply reading the lyric out loud as opposed to trying to sing it with instrumentation or melody. Again, Benji Cowart taught me this, and he actually is a really good melody writer and he plays guitar decent, but he recognizes that his number one strength is lyric. And he also recognizes that by him just presenting the lyric idea alone, it allows room for the other writer to put a melody or a piece of music behind it. It's more of an open-handed way of writing and invites the other writer in on the process more than just presenting a completed idea. Now, this isn't always going to be the case. If you feel like you've got a grand slam melody that's like the best thing you've ever written, throw it out, put it out there. But just know that sometimes you don't have to bring the fully baked thing. You can just present, a lyric idea or a melody idea, or, oftentimes it's like dummy lyrics where we're just singing vowel sounds and syllables, and that can often inspire what the other person in the room says, because there's been so many times where it's like you're kind of mumbling something and you don't even really know what you're saying. And you're like, nah, there's nothing. And then the other writer's like, oh, you said this. And you're like, no, I didn't say that, but that's a great idea. And so that's where we kind of stumble onto the magic in the writing process sometimes, is just, not feeling like we have to have the weight of presenting a fully fleshed out idea. So I love that tip for the lyricists out there. You can often just read it out, and it, where your head would go melodically is probably not where the other person's head would go melodically. So that's the beauty of it. And let's talk a little bit about giving feedback, because this is another really key skill. There's a great way to do it, and there's a not so great way to do it. When giving feedback, you want to be specific, actionable, and kind. You want to be specific, actionable, and kind when giving feedback. You want to avoid vague criticism. Instead of saying, this lyric is bad, say, what about something like fill in the blank? And then find a better way to rephrase what the other person's trying to say. Also, remember, sometimes the rule of silence is just as effective. Silence can be a feedback tool. Much of the co-writing rooms that I'm in, or many of the co-writing rooms that I'm in, are actually pretty silent most of the time, or at least silent while letting a loop of a track section play in the background. And what this does is it gives people time to think and flesh out ideas. You've got to balance this because you don't just want to be internally processing the whole time. Those types of rooms are very difficult, especially if you're writing remotely on Zoom, like so many of y'all are. It's finding a balance of being an internal processor, but also, communicating when it's the right time. Now, what I'm meaning as it relates to giving feedback is that just leaving silence every now and then, if you don't love someone's idea, can be just as effective as saying no. Let the silence be an invitation that says, what else? Give me more ideas. What else can you come up with? And remember, in addition to giving feedback, so many of us love to give feedback, but receiving feedback is just as important, if not even more important. Be open to it. Even if it's tough to hear, use it to grow and get better. Are you a person who gets defensive when your idea isn't the one that's chosen? Do you get offended if someone gives constructive feedback? How do you respond to feedback? It says so much about who we are as people. And remember, songwriting isn't about who's right and who's wrong. I want to put that out there. There is no right and wrong in songwriting. It's art at the end of the day. And all of this is really just a matter of taste and instinct and creativity. That's all that we have to go off of as creators, is our taste and our instinct. There's not a manual that says this is what a good song is. A good song is so many different things to so many different people. And so you need to remember that when you're getting feedback, that it's not meant to be taken personally. This is about the work and the ideas. It's not about you as a person. I'm going to say that again because this is so important. You need to remember that when you're getting feedback, it's not meant to be taken personally. This is about the work and the ideas, and it's not about you as a person. And just know, in the beginning of your songwriting journey, if you're just getting started, much of the time when you're writing with others who've done it a lot longer, that you'll probably need to be a little more deferential to the others in the room, but balance it with speaking up with confidence at the same time when you have something that you're really sure on. I remember when I first came to Nashville and I had no clue what co-writing was. I had a guy named Ian Eskelin bring me down. He was the first producer that I, back in the day, sent a manila folder with my press kit down. It had like my CD and a little pamphlet and some pictures and stuff. And he called me and brought me down to do this thing called co-writing. And so he put me in the room with him, and I think the first write I did was with him and Brian White, who many of you have also met through our retreats and some of the events that we've done. But I think in that first session, I don't know that I talked the entire time. I was just so shy and intimidated. And it wasn't because the guys in the room were like being rude or anything. I just had no idea what I was supposed to be doing in it. And so a lot of those first writes, I did that one with Brian, and really it was kind of Brian and Ian writing the song. And me as an artist, I obviously took the song and ran with it. And then the second write I did was with Ian and Tony Wood, who many of y'all have known as well too, and gotten to learn from and work with. And kind of the same deal. I just sat there as Tony read off all of these amazing lyrics and ideas, and basically my job was to just be the curator and say, yeah, I think that's great. So if you're new to it and you're new to the co-writing thing, there's gonna be time. It's gonna be a learning curve. It's gonna be a learning curve for how do you speak up in the room, what types of ideas do you love? In the beginning, you often don't even know what kinds of ideas you love until you start doing a lot of co-writes. And you have to kind of write those first 100 songs to figure out what are the types of things that resonate with you and what types of things don't, so that when you're in a room, you can know how to steer things and how to use those instincts and really to rely on them, because that's all you have is your instincts. So just know that it's absolutely okay if you're new to this, you're a little quieter than the others, that's okay. The goal is for you to kind of grow out of that and grow into a place where you can vocalize your thoughts and opinions and concepts and melodies and lyrics. But just know that it does take a learning curve to get there. So you want to be balancing with speaking up and listening and leaving silence at the same time. It's a tough art. It's a tough balance. It's like a dance, but ultimately that's what this is all about. The other big thing is we've got to know who we are and what is our role in the room. If we're not the artist in the room, ultimately the artist is who we are serving. So yes, our feedback that we can give is important, but at the end of the day, the artist's feedback is the most important. I know in most of the rooms that I'm in, I'm the producer writer, and I'm with a top liner and an artist. My feedback at the end of the day doesn't really matter as much as the artist's feedback. Yes, my feedback's important and it helps the process, and it can provide guardrails and a sounding board. And some artists who are less assertive and maybe newer need my feedback more, need my collaborators' feedback more. But for the ones who really know who they are and what they want to say, we're going to be more deferential to them and their ideas. Now, what about rooms where there isn't necessarily an artist in the room? Well, actually, hold on a second. I want to skip back to this. If you are the artist, this is really important. People are ultimately going to be looking to you because they're in the room to hopefully get a cut with you as the artist. So at the end of the day, you've got to, if you're the artist, doesn't matter if you're new, doesn't matter if you haven't done this before, you have to find a way to at least be able to vocalize, do I like this or do I not like this? Even if you're not the one coming up with all the ideas, which in the beginning, you're probably not going to be. But if you're the artist, just know that that's, people are writing with you because they want to get songs on your record. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't like pitch a song. If you end up writing something and it doesn't feel like you, that's totally okay. You can always pitch it after. But the attitude going in should always be, hey, I'm an artist. And, even like, for example, when I write with Brad from High Valley, I always know that everything we're writing is targeted towards High Valley, but not everything we write is going to be for High Valley, if that makes sense. So it's going to be the same for you as an artist. If you're an artist, that is the role you're signing up for. So what about rooms where there is no artist? And this is going to be the case for a lot of y'all out there who aren't necessarily getting into those rooms yet, and you're just writing with other writers. Or in my case, I call them pro days. We talked about it with Kenley last week at our songwriting retreat, but it's days where it's just me and one or two other just really pro songwriters that I love who are not necessarily artists, who gets to kind of have the final say in that point. And really, the answer to this is it just comes down to finding consensus. It's getting it to a place where everyone feels good about the end product. And compromise is actually necessary here. I'm talking about creative compromise. I'm not talking about compromising your values, but what I'm talking about is that the beauty of collaboration is that the result is most of the time not going to be exactly what you would have come up with 100% on your own. If you want more ideas and songs that you feel total 100% ownership over, and that is important to you, then give yourself some 100%er days just to write by yourself. But always balance it with plenty of collaboration. Many of the great co-writers I work with are perfectly capable of writing the song totally themselves and don't need anyone's help. Yesterday was case in point. I got to write with Red Akins, who's Hall of Fame country music songwriter. That guy could do everything top to bottom, doesn't need anyone's help. They co-write as a choice because they know that their ideas alone are going to get stale and recycled, and that real inspiration comes from collaborating. And they also know that there's strength in accessing other people's networks too, because there's people that I'm connected with that he's not necessarily connected with, and vice versa. So collaboration is super, super important. Let's talk about the second half of this beautiful word I just made up this morning called collaboration. Let's talk about the collaboration and teamwork side of things. Songwriting is rarely a solitary activity unless you just love writing 100% by yourself. You'll be working with co-writers, producers, artists, and people on their team as well. So building rapport and trust is crucial. You want to learn to create a comfortable and supportive environment. Understand that everyone has different personality types and work styles. That some people are fast-paced and others are methodical. Some people are external processors and others are internal processors. So you want to learn to be respectful and empathetic, and really ultimately to build rapport. This is where things like respect, empathy, understanding, and open communication are so important. There's going to be times when you disagree. And that's where, if you want to call it negotiation, I don't love that word, but you could call it that. But that's where negotiation and compromise come in. It's finding common ground, because your vision with others' input is ultimately what you're looking for at the end of the day. And you got to be willing to kill your darlings if it serves the song. That's something that so many of us have trouble with, because we think of our ideas and our songs as our babies, but we really cannot think of it that way, because you've got to be willing to just let them go. The other piece of this whole thing is, and I'll talk about it. I'll come back to that point here. I want to talk a little bit about this, more about this building rapport thing. One of my favorite co-writers that I get to work with a lot is Emily Weisband, and she's a master at building rapport. And so much of that is she is so good at the first part of the session, where it's just talking and have an open conversation. You're not even trying to write a song, but it's just having that open conversation with the co-writers to talk about what's going on with life. With Emily, she's funny, she's vulnerable to the max, and she's always great at asking questions and getting down to the heart level with whoever she's in the room with. It's about breaking past the top level of surfacey communication that most of our days are filled with. See, this is the beauty of songwriting. The songwriting room becomes ultimately, in the best case, the safest space where you can share deep insecurities, fears, and feelings. That is ultimately key number one, number two, and number three for building the rapport. When I'm in sessions with Emily, there's so many of them where the first third of the time is spent on this initial conversation, and then the last 2/3 is actually writing the song. In the beginning, I was like, well, are we wasting time to be? But no, it's not at all. That's actually a good thing. So with building rapport, you're trying to just get down beyond the surface level, because that's where all the good songs are. That's where all the good ideas are. And you want to learn to find as much common ground with your collaborators as possible. So the next thing I want to talk about is that conflict resolution is also essential. You want to be able to address disagreements constructively and professionally, and don't let emotions escalate. You want to focus on finding solutions. There's going to be conflicts in this crazy field of songwriting. Surprise, surprise. There's going to be conflicts in the room, and there's going to be conflicts outside the room. In my experience, the conflicts outside the room can be way more common, because most of my collaborators understand that you want to keep the writing room a safe space, a conflict-free zone as much as possible. We have a sign at our studio that says "Dare to Suck." I love it because it says that this is a safe space. No one is going to attack you if they think the idea is not good or if it's not what they agree with. So that's my first advice here. Make the writing room a conflict free zone as much as possible. So let's look at an example of what this might look like in a writing room. Let's say you and a co-writer are disagreeing on what the bridge of a song should be. One wants a big anthemic feel, and the other wants something more intimate. Instead of arguing, try to understand each other's vision, and maybe you can find a middle ground or even create two versions of the song to see what works best. Oftentimes, that's the best ideas. Let's try your idea, and then so that's idea A. Okay, let's try idea B, and then we can kind of compare them. And oftentimes in the room, you're going to know which one is the better idea because you got to hear it back. So remember, the goal is to create the best song possible. It's not to win an argument. So that's stuff in the room, or if you want to call it in the Zoom room, if you're writing virtually. Now, outside of the writing room, oftentimes conflicts happen when a writer is talking bad about another writer behind their back. And the worst thing that can happen is that it gets back to them, and that is ultimately the biggest bridge burner. So you don't want to do that. Don't be a person that talks bad about other people. This is, again, so much of this is just 101, but it has to be reiterated because I'm in rooms with people who do this all the time. And the first thing my head goes to is, oh, well, what are they saying about me? If they're willing to say these things about this writer that I was just with last week, like, what are they saying about me? So just don't do that. It's just human skills 101. Another conflict that can happen outside of the writing room is what happens if the other writers aren't being responsive and following up with you to want to finish a song. Maybe they don't like it as much as you did, or they got a bad vibe in the room and just don't care to finish it with you. The best thing you can do in that situation is to communicate with them that you'd like to bring somebody else in on the song to help finish it out, or maybe you want to take it and tweak it and finish it out yourself. Most of the time, if they're non-responsive, it's just not going to be an issue, because if you've showed that, hey, I've tried texting them 2 or 3 times, tried emailing them, they're not responding, at that point, it's on them for not communicating. So ultimately, that's all you can do, is you can just try to over communicate. The other common conflict that we encounter in this business is often about song splits, like who has ownership of the publishing and the writing side of things. At Full Circle, at our Academy and Song Chasers, we always advocate for even splits, just so there's no room for confusion. But if you're a new writer, then communicating on the front end is important for setting expectations. Now, it doesn't need to be a signed contract or a split sheet. I'll reiterate that again. You don't have to have something signed contractual on paper. It can be a simple text or email saying, hey, I do even splits on all my co-writes. Is that cool with you? If you've been doing this long enough and you get into the community and you understand that's just kind of the understanding, you usually don't even need to have those conversations. But in the beginning, sometimes it's important just to avoid any potential confusion. And remember that people will remember you more for how you handle and resolve conflict oftentimes than what you do in the room. So make sure that you're always taking the high road. So that is the collaboration side. Is everybody still with me out there? Got some great questions in the chat. I am going to definitely make some time at the end to cover some questions. Give me a shout out in the chat. Let me know you're still with me out there. All right. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Carolyn, Charlene, Vanessa. This is a lot of stuff that so many of you already just innately know. You're probably like, do people not do this stuff? And that's going to be most of the people, but every now and then, one or two of us needs a good reminder of these things. And oftentimes we just need that mirror to see, how are we actually being perceived and how are we interacting with other people? I love it. Carolyn says, I'm not pasting it all here because it's huge and lots of good stuff. I can't type that fast. Well, thankfully, we do have replays up after the fact if you guys want to go back. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the next key soft skill, and that is networking. Building your network is vital. Attend industry events. Connect with other songwriters, producers, and artists. Come to things like our songwriting retreat, like so many of you did last week. Make meaningful connections and follow up. And remember, online networking is just as important nowadays. You want to be making sure to maintain a professional online presence and social media accounts. So just a few quick tips on this. Again, attending those events, not being afraid to follow up with people, and making sure that you're taking all the stuff that Rick Barker teaches about your online presence, your social media, your website, your email list, that you're having all of that up to date and that it represents you in a professional, positive way that would make other people know who you are and what you do. Ultimately, professionalism and reliability are key. So I say reliability because this is another thing with networking is building relationships with people. So much of it is about meeting your deadlines, fulfilling your commitments. If you say you're going to have a demo done by tomorrow, have it done by tomorrow. And if you're not going to have it done by tomorrow, communicate that you won't have it done by tomorrow. The key is to maintaining a positive attitude. Your reputation is everything here. And the other piece of networking is self-promotion. When I say self-promotion out loud, I'm sure a lot of you guys get like squeamish and like, we all hate self-promotion. Let's just call it out, call it what it is. Self-promotion doesn't feel great to do. Now, you don't have to be pushy, but you do need to talk about your work. So again, this is where creating a professional online presence and having those social media accounts up to date is so important. And also understanding the importance of how you communicate in email or in your DMs. The worst thing you can do is, sending something that is too verbose or too long. I get these DMs all the time from people that I'm like, it just gives me a headache to look at because it's such a long message and I just get lost in the word salad of it. There's also the flip side where being too, too concise, if you want to call it that, like getting a DM like, hey, let's work together. Like that's not really going to be that inspiring either. Remember that the best networking is finding ways to serve and add value first. Serve and add value to others rather than asking them to listen to your work or to work with you. Start by serving and then make the ask. So that's a little bit on networking. The last thing I want to talk about here, we've talked about collaboration, we've talked about networking. I want to talk about resilience, adaptability, and resilience. This is going to make or break the career for so many people. The music industry is a really tough field. You're going to be facing rejection. You're going to be facing more rejection than acceptance. It's normal. Don't let it discourage you. Learn from it and keep moving forward. You got to be flexible. You got to be open to change. You got to be like a tree that can flex with the wind and with the storms. The industry is constantly evolving. So be willing to adapt to new styles and approaches. Don't be the person that says, no, that's not how it's done. Like, be open to new ways of how it's done. This is just so important. I can't overstate it enough. Just a few tips on resilience. You want to ultimately be learning from rejection. I love the quote. I don't know who it was. My friend Brandon says it all the time, but in life, you don't win or you lose. You win or you learn. And I love that. I love reframing failure as an opportunity to learn. I've heard people, Kobe Bryant was interviewed and people were asking him about what he's learned from his success. And he's like, I don't really learn anything from my success. I learn from my times that I mess up on the court. And that's the only time you're really learning. When you're going through those hard seasons, when you're going through that rejection, look at it as what can I gain from this situation. Um, staying positive. That's so much of it, is just mastering the perspective in our heads and just drilling in this eternal, relentless positivity. And this is where I actually really love guys like Tony Robbins, Joel Osteen. Yeah, some of it feels a little cheesy. Some of it may feel a little like woo woo or whatever. But like listening to those positive affirmations actually does go a long way. It's something that Rusty, who is the president of Sony, is such a big proponent of and such a big champion of. He's always sending inspirational quotes, messages, Tony Robbins clips, things like that, because our tendency, or at least my tendency, is to gravitate towards the negative when we're encountering so much of our work that never goes anywhere. The hardest thing is to stay positive in a field where we're looking around. And the dark side of social media is that we have a constant comparison game going on of, well, this person had a release come out today, why did my thing not come out? And so you want to stay positive, and you want to approach every one of those situations from a spirit of, if you feel one thing, if you feel the negative, move in the opposite, act in the opposite. If you feel jealousy or frustration that your peer had a record that went number one, or that got picked for some award, or got whatever, then celebrate them rather than letting your head go to the place of, they don't deserve it, I deserve it. It's mastering that battle inside your own head, inside your own heart, inside your own soul. And yes, Scott Anderson, I love this. Adaptability and resilience is a different definition of A&R. I love that. I love that. That's really good. So learn from rejection. Stay positive. Manage your stress. What are you doing to manage your stress? Do you, are you exercising? Are you eating healthy? Are you doing saunas and cold plunges? Those types of things, like they all make a big difference. Like making sure that you're getting your brain the food that it needs. A guy that I love to follow on brain health is Dr. Daniel Amen, and he's done tens of thousands of brain scans of people over the years, and so much of it is you want to just be treating your brain well. Like, what food are you putting in your body? Are you getting enough vitamin D? Like, just basic health stuff. This makes such a difference in how you manage and respond to stress. And another thing is just knowing that it's okay to take breaks every now and then. And this might even be like in the middle of a tough writing session. Maybe taking a break is simply going outside and walking around for a few minutes, or going and getting a coffee, or going to, we always joke that like the best ideas come when you leave the room and you go take a bathroom break and then you come back with the idea. That's so much of the case. So stay positive, manage your stress, take breaks. And ultimately, you want to be having a healthy spiritual, emotional, and mental health inside of you. All of those things are equally as important. Spiritual probably being the most important. Have a healthy spiritual, emotional, and mental health. Do not forget self-care. Songwriting can be demanding, and it can be really hard on the soul. It can be hard on your heart. So you want to be managing your time and prioritizing self-care, while at the same time setting those goals, setting realistic goals, and taking breaks when you need to. Remember that your spiritual, emotional, and mental health are just as important as your musical talent. Now, as we're wrapping up, we have one of my favorite podcasts that we ever recorded was with a guy named Jerry Negrado. It's going to be up by tomorrow, I believe. Maggie and Riley can confirm that. But this is one of the most important conversations I think we've ever had on our podcast. So I want all of you to just give yourself a reminder to listen to that when it comes out. And it's all about exactly this: how to take care of yourself spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. Jerry is a coach and practices what he calls soul care for musicians. So this is just going to be such a key thing that I want all of you to listen to and take it to heart. So yes, Riley says it's going to be out tomorrow. But yeah, anyway, that's so much on resilience. So we talked about collaboration, we talked about networking, we talked about resilience. There's a whole lot more than that, but that's what I will leave you with for this morning, because I don't want to overwhelm you with information, but these are the most important things I could think of.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Made It in Music podcast. And be sure to check out our other episodes where we unpack hundreds of hot topics with some of the top music industry pros, both here in Nashville and all over the world. Subscribe to make sure that you automatically get future episodes, and leave us a review if you loved it. It would really help us out. Or send an email to support@fullcirclemusic.com if you have ideas for how we can improve the show. If you would like to become a Songchasers member and attend our training sessions live, head over to joinsongchasers.com to learn more. You also get additional exclusive training from music industry professionals. You get our royalty-free custom tracks from Seth Mosley. You get song reviews from me and my team, and you get access to a custom social media network we created exclusively for songwriters and musicians. There's nothing else like it on the internet. Head to joinsongchasers.com to learn how to join, and check out madeitinmusic.com for more content and episodes from this podcast. See you in the next episode.